You know, folks, they say politics makes for strange bedfellows, and that's definitely the case with this next video because now Donald Trump and Jeb Bush are on the same side. They're thanking each other for everything that's going on nowadays, and they seem to be perfectly aligned, which is something that you wouldn't have thought you would have seen back in 2016, especially if you'd have watched this clip from the Republican debate when Donald Trump just lashed into Jeb W. Bush. This was the moment that MAGA really got behind Trump very solidly. And ever since then, they've hung on to this Donald Trump. This is the guy that they think is still there. He's not, by the way. We can talk more about that later. But this is the moment that Donald Trump began to resonate with the MAGA base, and this is the moment that they built on. Now, they're in a whole nother world with Jeb Bush, but let's take a look at how this thing got started. Take a look.
For his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush. When a member on the stage's brother gets attacked,
I got about 5 or 6.
So that's where we started, but this is where we're at. Jeb Bush posted this. President Trump's decision to neutralize Iran's nuclear program is a watershed moment. It reasserts U.S. strength, restores deterrence, and sends an unmistakable message to the rogue regimes. The era of impunity is over, and here is his statement with UANI. And then Donald Trump posted this, but I want you to take a look at it from this page over on Twitter. They shared this where Donald Trump said, "Thank you, Jeb Bush, very much appreciated." But look right here at MAGA's reaction to that. "We like Trump because he wasn't like the Bush family. What a shame he has become." And folks, when I went back and watched that clip, I got to thinking about how that for those of us that talked about politics our entire life, we understand that politicians will let you down. You vote for somebody and you don't always get what you voted for. And then when the election rolls back around, you have a decision to make as to whether or not you want to hang with that person and keep going or you want to go in a different direction. Well, people got into Donald Trump for completely different reasons. They got into him because he wasn't that politician. He wasn't that same run-of-the-mill politician that they'd always seen. And there he was standing up there talking about how he didn't need their money. I'm not like them. And he's criticizing the Bushes, which for Republicans, they had spent 8 years when Bush and Cheney was in office. They had spent 8 years trying to defend that. And then after Obama's presidency, they spent 8 years trying to distance himself from the Bush family. So here was Trump who was standing up there, and to the apolitical kind of voter, to the person who wasn't your mainstream kind of voter that just went about their day, they tuned in and they saw the host from Celebrity Apprentice. They saw a familiar face standing up there talking about how that he was different, how he didn't need their money and how he wasn't for their wars. And they decided to give him a shot at it because they wanted him to burn it all to the ground. That's what you got to understand about MAGA. That's what they wanted him to do. Now, me personally, I've always, at that particular time, we all wanted change. I wanted Bernie Sanders because I was tired of seeing Bushes and Clintons in the White House. But I never could get behind the idea of let's burn it all down, because if you burn it all down, then innocent people are going to suffer, and a lot of poor people are going to suffer. So I never was for the idea of burning it down, but I do understand where they were coming from back then at that particular point. But as we went forward, they continued to think that Donald Trump was that guy in that moment debating Jeb Bush. And they still, a lot of them thinks that he's that guy, but he's not. Now he's right there in alignment with the Bushes. And all I can say to MAGA is, how does that make you feel now when you realize, like so many of us has realized in our life, that you can get played by a politician, and that Donald Trump was just like all of the politicians that he said he wasn't like? You see, again, going back to January 6th, we call that out every chance. I call it out every chance I get, and I will continue to call it out. It will always be a massive deal breaker for me. But again, they were for burning it down. They liked the idea of it. They wanted to see it all get burned to the ground. They still want to see it burned to the ground. And now there Trump is, perfectly in line with the Bushes. And everything that he set out to be, he's no longer that. And he can't blame what's going on in Iran. He cannot blame that on Joe Biden. He sure as hell can't blame it on Barack Obama because he pulled out of the Iran deal. He is the one who is solely responsible for this, and he's the one who's going to stand there and answer for it. And meanwhile, while he's standing there answering for it, he has Jeb Bush. He has Jeb Bush thanking him for it. And the reason I'm cracking up is because what a place to be in. That's why, and I'm not going to play the clip, I know y'all have seen it, but that's why you saw Trump so upset, and he's sitting there going, they don't know what the fuck is going on. No, the truth is, he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He had no clue what in the fuck was going on. He thought he could go out there and create a problem and then fix it or pretend to fix it and make everyone think you were the savior. Well, you don't get to start the fire and then call the fire department. You don't get to do that. That's what he always tries to do, though, and that's what he tried to do here. And he really thought he could get in there, do a little one and done, and come back out. And it just goes to show you how truly clueless that the man is. And then you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Joe Rogan, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, all these big-time MAGA people who are breaking from him and going, whoa, this is a complete turnaround. This is not what we wanted. This is not what we voted for. And there's a lot of people that I've noticed on social media that used to be posting every day about what Donald Trump did. Through all this, they posted about him every day. Suddenly, it's crickets. Suddenly, it's silence. And my question is, why is it silence? We all know why it's silence, because he's now Donald W. Bush. He's now one of them. Everything that they thought that he was, he proved that he's not. So now they got to live with it. And now they got to know how the rest of us felt when we voted for people who didn't always get it done. Now, in our case, we will move from one politician to the next one. Whoever the next runner-up is, we'll figure it out. We'll decide. We won't all agree on it. When it comes time to pick a 2028 nominee for the Democratic Party, I can go ahead and predict this, and this won't be right. We're not going to agree, okay? We're not going to agree on who it is. And when it comes time to vote, there's going to be a whole lot of people who does this every time, and these people get on my nerves just as much as anyone else. But there'll be the people that writes in the third party. There'll be the people that decides to stay home that day. There'll be the people that thinks that whoever the Democrats pick ain't doing quite enough. There'll always be those people throwing the wrench in. But the point is, we will disagree, and then we will line up and get behind somebody. But we get behind a set of ideas and the person that most aligns with our ideas, whereas MAGA got behind Donald Trump solely because they thought he was unlike the other politicians. And they thought that he was going to be this one-of-a-kind dude, which in some ways he is. He definitely is one of a kind. He's one of a kind that I hope we never see again in my lifetime or my grandson or my grandson's grandson's lifetime. I would not wish a Trump presidency on any generation of Americans. But we've got work to do. We have to stay focused on the issues at hand. We don't care about which one's the leader. We don't follow a leader. We're not in a cult. We are people that believes in the issues at hand. We believe in what we stand for. We're going to stand for it. And we're not going to sit around and wait on a hero to save us like MAGA did. If you sit around and wait on a hero to save you, you're going to always be disappointed. So we're not going to do that. We're going to sit here. We're going to keep the issues at hand on the table. We're going to talk about what people go through day to day in their day-to-day lives and how we can improve it and how we can make it better. And we have to save ourselves, because you can't go down the road MAGA did. If you go down that road, you're going to end up with somebody who is everything that you thought they weren't.